all of this conversation about Aisha Curry and the things that she said on that Call Me Daddy podcast, all of this, it's all Riley's fault. It's all Riley Curry's fault. I think that a key piece of this conversation that is missing is particularly about what I like to call the teen daughter effect. I think that Riley Curry is the reason and the catalyst behind not just why Aisha Curry is speaking out so openly and so boldly about what her experiences have been in her journey in womanhood, but is also the catalyst for why Aisha Curry realized at a personal level that she had some work that she needed to do. And I like to call this the teen daughter effect. And as a fellow millennial, Aisha Curry is a millennial, I'm a millennial. We old, right? Gen Z, we old, but we're still young enough to remember and to still feel like teenagers or to still feel like youthful. And we walk that delicate line between the analog and the digital. Millennials are the generation of adults who experienced typewriters, we experienced cursive and handwriting, but we also were introduced to computers and desktops and laptops and cell phones and iPods, Walkman, CD player. Like, we're old enough to have had those old experiences, but are still young enough to really be into the digital culture and into the electronics and all of those things. And I think that gives us a unique experience and positioning, not just as women, but as parents, and more specifically as Black mothers to Black teenage daughters who are brilliant, who are ambitious, who are talented, who are curious, who are a little bit rebellious and exuberant and very lively and expressive. And I say that this is Riley Curry's fault. She did this jokingly because she is 13. She just turned 13 in July. I have a 15-year-old daughter. She just turned 15 on July 9th. Riley Curry turned 13 on July 19th. And I think that for mothers, specifically millennial mothers, Black millennial mothers who have Black teenage daughters, watching them come into their own is one of the most sobering experiences that you will have as a young old mom. Right? I had my daughter when I was 19, got pregnant at 18, gave birth at 19. And being a young mother, growing together, but now being at a stage as the mother, like I'm the adult, and being looked to for guidance, for example, for support, or not, because that's a big part of teenagers too. They don't want your help, but it's so sobering because it is a very self-reflective process as a mother to have to be responsive to the needs of your growing child, specifically your growing Black daughter in a society that is racist and misogynist, and that is capitalist, and that is all of these isms and ologies steeped into it, and watching your daughter or having to support her as she navigates that terrain. Because I feel like as millennials, we really have encouraged our children to push the envelope, to always go to the places or conceive of things that have never been conceived of before, even as we kind of stand at the threshold of, certain old ideologies or old traditions and looking out into the future and seeing what the capacity of our children are. It's scary, but it's really, it's a really empowering experience to see that how much the world has changed and how much is possible. How much is possible for these children that we have, these brilliant, ambitious, these talented Black girls that we're raising, and watching them come to terms with the world and the society and who they are and who other people are and what it is and what it isn't is a very sobering experience, is the best way that I can put it. And so I journaled on this a little bit. What happens when you have a daughter finding herself, her identity, her place in the world, family, friends, and in her social groups, and she's transitioning from girlhood from being a young girl to being a young adult. And then that is happening in tandem and at the same time when you as a mother and a woman are face to face with your own mortality and your own aging. When your daughter is looking to you, but also individuating, she's also looking to you as the example and the standard of what it means to be a woman, right? A woman. What is the standard for being a woman, and how do I walk in this world in that and with that? Also, she's individuating and she wants to be her own person. She wants to be her own woman and she wants to be her own person. And when that happens, she is going to question who you are, what your choices are, your goals in your life, and her experiences. And I think that is what specifically Black mothers refer to as their daughters having a smart mouth, or this attitude phenomenon is the young girl, the teenager, coming to terms and coming to grips with the fact that you are flawed. You are a flawed human, and those flaws run deep, and some resentment towards what you could have been or what you could have done or what you didn't do or what you did do. And I think that that's very difficult for us as mothers to contend with, and especially as Black mothers to contend with, because even Aisha Curry, who is privileged, she has a certain physical beauty, but she also has financial access. She still is in a gilded cage. She gets to have a lifestyle or make choices within certain parameters. And I think that for her, Riley holding up that mirror for her and showing her how limited she is had pushed her to test those limits and test those boundaries, and have to come into her own and come into herself in a way where she had to start questioning her own choices. She had to start questioning her own life. She said herself, once Riley turned 1, she's kind of like, well, what about me and what about my life? And that is what daughters do to you. That is what the feminine is expansive and is additive and is quantum. Is you look at your daughter and be like, yeah, I gotta do something. Like, this little girl is gonna grow up one day, and not only is she gonna need material things, she's gonna need wisdom, she's gonna need guidance, she's gonna need my support. And I have to figure out how I can be the best woman that I can be so that I can show up as the best mother that she needs. And Riley Curry in particular, her daughter Riley, which is her oldest daughter, and she has another daughter too, a younger daughter and 2 sons. But Riley Curry in particular being her first daughter, she's 13, that's the first teenage years. And it's something like that smacks you upside the head into reality when your daughter goes from 12 to 13. Like, it's like reality just hits you upside the head. Like 13 years done went by and you looking around and like, where did the time go? What did I do with those? Where did that decade plus 3 go? What did I do with that time? And specifically Riley, I don't know if y'all remember this, but I think a compounding factor is that at the time when Aisha had Riley, early in their marriage, like they had just gotten married, Steph Curry, his rise to superstardom was just starting. He was playing for that team out in California, the Warriors, and they were winning championships. Like, he was hitting threes, he was doing press conferences, and he had brought Riley to the post games with him, and she would be talking on the mic, and she would be singing like the latest rap songs. Like, she was a lively, exuberant, she had personality, like she was a colorful child. And so that grows. She really grew into that. Having a colorful child myself who was always, very lively, singing, dancing, talkative, creative, like really expressive. It compounds. Like, they don't tend to recede into anything in particular in terms of like, they don't stop being who they are. They become more of who they are as you support that. So as the family has continued to, nurture her growth, and she has access to certain privileges and things like that, and money and resources and all of that, I'm sure that Riley Curry's personality has only continued to mature, and she's continued to be more outspoken, and she's continued to want to pursue things, and she can be more expressive, and she's continued to be talkative and curious and responsive, and wanting to be connected or like have relationships with people. Like, that's what she reads to as me, as a very lively young girl that's just full of life and just full of so much promise and ready to go out into the world. And when you, as a mother who didn't have that sort of same support, or you kind of gave that up, for one thing, you traded in your black girl magic for motherhood and wifehood, or you traded in your black girl magic to be in relationship or to be connected to a man, or you traded it in so that you can stay in your family system, or you traded it in for a career. Like, when you trade and barter parts of yourself, and you have to watch your daughter live in the fullness of who she is, when you've given up bits and pieces of yourself, it's either going to inspire envy and jealousy, or it's going to light a fire up under you, and you're going to want to reclaim all the different parts of yourself. You're going to start saying to yourself, damn, I remember when I used to really enjoy life, and I used to laugh, and I used to be excited, and I used to like writing, and I used to read books all the time, and I used to do this, and I used to do that. And it's not, emotional immaturity or getting stuck in nostalgia. Is a reawakening. It's a remembrance of who you are at a very natural and a very innate level of remembering, like, wow, I am love and light and joy and creativity. And that's what you see in your teenage daughter. It's like, wow, okay. And so you have a choice to make, because when your daughter starts questioning you and start questioning the decisions that you made, which, make no mistake about it, she gonna question you, and you're gonna have to answer for it one way or another, because the reality is that our daughters have to live out what we go through with us. They have to walk it down with us. So you don't get to tell her to, stay in a child's place, or, I did the best that I could, which maybe you did. But there is a certain acknowledgement, and there is a certain coming to terms with the fact that your best just wasn't good enough in that moment. And it's okay to accept that and face that reality, and then be able to move forward from there, so that your best can just keep getting better and better and better. And so that you can really be who you need to be, not just for your child, but for you too. Because even in those circumstances where you did your best, you didn't do your best. You didn't even do your best for you. How can you do your best for another person? And having to come to terms with that and face the reality of that. And I think that as mothers, we will feel and we will live with our daughter's disdain. Like, we will feel and see the impact in her of our daughter's gaze, and we'll see and feel the impact of that kind of monitoring, and like being watched and being looked to for guidance or wisdom or understanding or support, or just sisterhood. Because our mothers are our first example for how women have relationship with each other, how we are in a sisterhood. Your mother ingratiates you, or she brings you in to what it means to be a woman, and what it means to be a sister to other women within, the world or your family system, and how women interact in your family system, and friendships, and all of those spaces. And so when she has questions, or she's questioning, or she's curious and probing, even judging, even condemning, that is all a part of her having to learn or develop the skills and the emotional capacity to be a woman, to live in this society. You can't withhold your story as a woman from your daughter, because that's her birthright. You birthed her into this bloodline. So for you to withhold your experiences from her, you're robbing her. You are robbing her of her birthright, of that mitochondrial lineage, of that mitochondrial legacy, and what it means to be a woman of your bloodline, of your ilk, of your dimensionality. So our daughters need that. And I think that one of the most beautiful things about being a woman, and especially a Black woman, is this ability that we have to course correct and to always be developing and deepening our understanding and our experiences. So I think that as our teenage daughters begin to learn and grow, we can use that as an opportunity for us to learn and grow too. Because now our mothering and our motherhood is transitioning, it's changing phases. The needs of a teenager are different from the needs of an 8-year-old or of a 5-year-old or of a newborn. And we can really see that as our children start transitioning into these different ages and they start getting older and older and older, their needs are going to change, and we can use it as an opportunity to get to learn them better, get to learn ourselves better, get to understand more about what they need or what their need, and learn to anticipate what their needs may be from you. So you can then actually say, I did my best. I did my best. I showed up. I showed up in the way that in earnest, I thought that needed to be done, or I felt that needed to be done, because I took the time to get to know you and I took the time to get to know me. And I could be honest with myself and say that, you know what, based off of what skills I went out and I sought and wanted to learn about myself and the ways that I wanted to learn you and show up for you, this is what I got. And I think the hardest part for mothers is accepting the fact that our children have the right, they have the autonomy and the sovereignty to say that they don't want it. That's hard. The last piece that I want to touch on that I can get into at another time is that I want to dispel this myth and the mythos that boys are just easier to raise, that I hear women a lot say, especially Black women, in the culture say, you know, like, oh, boys are easier to raise. I have a 15-year-old daughter and I have a 7-year-old son. Boys are not easier to raise. I think that women like to say that boys are easier to raise because we get some plausible deniability, right? We get to say that, you know, because of the gender differential and all of the different gender dynamics and the social dynamics, living in the patriarchy and all of these different things, that we get to kind of do what we want to do when it comes to boys and still be able to have some plausible deniability about, you know, well, I did what I could, shoulder shrug, oh, well. But I really think that mothers try with their sons in a very different way than they try with their daughters. And so it's just weird that they put in so much effort with the boys but still understand that, like, you know, that's not gonna work. But with daughters, they do it a lot less. And I think that if women put as much effort into doing the things that we know that raises or helps to support in raising healthy, whole, happy young girls, that we would get a lot more out of it, not just as a culture and a society, but at an individual level. We would get more out of it if we poured into our daughters in the ways that they need to be poured into, that we know they need to be poured into, versus pouring into our sons the way that we feel like we should because they're a boy or they're a Black boy, or, you know, they don't have a dad around. And so I think that is the boys are easier to raise, because with girls, you can't shirk your responsibility in preparing or ingratiating your girl child into womanhood. Like, that's a you job. That's something that you should be preparing her for. That's something that you should be doing. And that's something that you actually would have to answer for. Like, a lot of times I hear men complain about their mothers, or they ran my dad off, or, you know, my mom didn't prepare me for this, or, you know, my mom didn't do this for me as a boy child. Those are kind of just like, well, what did you want her to do as a woman to help you as a male socialize with other males? You know, it's kind of just like, it just don't match to a certain extent. But when it comes to daughters, you absolutely, as a mother, have a responsibility, and you are duty bound to prepare your girl child to become an adult female, a woman. And I think that there are too many women who fall short on that. And I'm interested, and I want to see, and I've been telling people about this, Cardi B and Culture. I can't wait for Culture she's going to get older and she's going to write a book. She's going to have a tell-all. Culture, she's going to have to run it down. In the same way how you see people say that Northwest antagonizes Kim Kardashian, it's going to be in that same vein and ideology, that, like, these girls grow up and are going to become teenagers and adults, and they get to have a voice, and they get to tell the story of how your decisions affected their life, and what the impact of that is, and what that has on them. I'm particularly interested to hear how Culture is navigating, and what she's going through at this time, mentally, emotionally, physically, with having to have contend with the fact that she had to grow up in a home where her mom and her dad was always going at it. They were always, it wasn't a happy marriage. Growing up in a home where there isn't a happy marriage, where there's cheating, where there's abuse, where your mother is emotionally and mentally unstable and being destabilized by your father. Growing up in that home and then going through the emotional turmoil of the separation, of the split, and having, your father over here and your mother over there, when you're used to them being together, even though it's toxic, you're used to them being together. And then in the midst of that, your mother is having more children with your father. But then also, now that they are separated, your mom is having a completely new child by a different man who also has children in other places with other women, by different women. And so I think that that's something that I'm not sure Cardi has conceptualized that she's going to have to contend with, which I don't understand why, because she had a fraught relationship with her own mother as a teenager. Like, she ended up being an SW at a young age. But also I'm interested to see how she's going to navigate that. Like, how are you going to handle the fact that you feel like you're giving your children everything? Like, you're giving her all of these material things, and she has this and she has that, and you're being there for you were being there for them when you could, because you still have to work and you have a new album and you're going to be going on tour and all of these other things that children really don't care about, and they're not supposed to because they're children. How is she going to manage that? And still, it's just going to be very interesting. I think that a culture is going to have a lot more hurt and bitterness and resentment towards her mother than Cardi is willing to accept at this time, or is even going to be aware of when she brings it to her. Or a culture is going to feel resentment and bitterness and anger and hurt towards her mother in a way that she may not even be able to acknowledge or deal with until she's older, until she is 30 plus, realizing like, wow, I really feel some type of way towards my mom about this stuff. And it comes up. it comes up. It's gonna come up. Any woman can tell you that she has had on her own womanhood journey, motherhood journey, she has had to explore and contend with and unearth and work through the issues and things that she's had with her own mother, whether it's person to person and it's things that they can work through together and acknowledge and resolve, or if it's just in her journal going through and working through the emotions and the remnants of all of those things. And so, yeah, it's Riley Curry's fault that Ayesha Curry feels like she got cheated, because she did. She's watching her young daughter have the world be opened up to her and all these options, and have loving parents and have a support system, having all the things that Ayesha knew that she was provided as a young girl, and being the mother and being in a position to give those provisions to her own daughter. And she's saying like, wow, I want so much more for my daughter. And I'm seeing that there is so much more for my daughter. Why couldn't my parents see that for me? Why couldn't my mother see that for me? Why wasn't I encouraged to see that for myself? What was it about me at that time that I couldn't even see for myself how much was out there in the world for me than what I resign myself to, or what I settled to, because that's what they call it. They call it settling down. So why couldn't I conceptualize a life for myself beyond just being settled down? And it's not that, I don't want my children, or I don't want to be married, or any of those things. I can't speak to that because she did not say that, and that is not what I'm getting. What I'm getting is a woman who is growing and learning and maturing and cycling through womanhood as we do, because that's the nature of womanhood, and having to do that with an audience, being her children, namely her teenage daughter, and watching her hold the mirror up, or having her hold the mirror up, and she looking at her reflection, and she doesn't really like what she's seeing, and she's trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I shift and change it so I like what I see. I like what I see, and I can feel good about what I'm seeing, and I can take that, what I'm seeing, my authentic desires, my true self, who I really am, and take that person and project that out into the world, or attract the things that I truly want, my real heart's desires, beyond what I have resigned myself to and being responsible for someone as a wife, as a mother, as a caretaker. I want to be beyond that. I want to be expansive. I'm multidimensional. I'm not just one thing to one person. I'm all of these different things all at the same time, and doing that reclamation and reintegrating all of those different parts of herself. And I would like to say that I admire her for that, and I commend her for that, because it's not easy. It is not an easy thing to do. You don't always have people support. She even said herself, like, her husband doesn't understand what she's going through. He's not going to understand what we experience as a woman, because it's not just emotional. It's not just emotional. It's not just mental. It is biological, and it is spiritual, physiological. Our bodies have this inextricable connection to our children. We can always feel them, and we can always feel for them. My children are 15 and 7. There are times when my body will wake me up out my sleep. Like, it's some kids around. You need to make sure that they okay. And I'll have to get up out I'm half sleep or dozing off, and my body is like, hey, you got to secure these children. And I'm up, making sure the doors is locked, making sure everybody in their bed, making sure everybody breathing. That thing that you do when your children are newborns, and they breathing, you still do that as they get older. And as they become teenagers, making sure, you ain't got no food in this room, do you? Making sure you're not up on the phone all night. Making sure when I get up in the morning that you've actually left the house for school. It's like those sorts of things that, as a mother, is not just logistics based. It is deeply rooted and connected to our nurturing and our nourishing of these children. And that's the piece that men will never understand, that we have to go through and experience, even with a husband like a Steph Curry, who not just has the resources, he has the social capital. Like I said, Steph Curry is a celebrity. He's a real life celebrity, like, especially on the West Coast. Again, at that time when they had just got married and just had that baby, his rise to stardom was happening. Like, he was being catapulted into the public eye. He was hitting the threes. Him and Klay Thompson was like dynamic duo on the basketball court. I forgot what they used to call him. Draymond Green was on the team, and it was like he was a part of a legacy. He's a part of a legacy in that city, in that state, in this country, a basketball dynasty. His father was a basketball player. His brother is a professional basketball player as well. So, like, this is a legacy. The Currys is a legacy, is a name. And she has to contend with the fact that that's who she married. That's the family that she's married into, and raising a daughter within that context of all of these things going on in the family, but also how do you find your own place in that? How do you navigate that? And the best way to teach a child how to do something like that is you have to do it herself. She realized that I can't just tell my daughter, have your own life, grow your own businesses, do your own things. I have to actually go out and do it so I can show her, and she can feel confident and she can feel competent in the fact that it's doable, it's feasible, and it can be done because my mommy did it. I saw my mom do it. And that's not to say that girls can't do things that women in their bloodline have never done. It is to give them the confidence and give them the knowing and the wherewithal and the understanding that, I can do a different thing. I can do something different. I don't have to be this or that. I can do, yes, it can be a yes and, not this or that. Yes and. Aisha Curry is Steph Curry's husband, and she's Riley Curry's mother, and she's a businesswoman, and she does this, and she does that, and just adding, just fucking up some commas. Yes and. I'm this and I'm this. I'm this and I'm this. I'm not either or. I'm not gonna be a wife or a mother. I'm not gonna be a wife or a businesswoman. I'm not gonna be a